7 years of marriage, a beautiful home in Chicago suburbs, and suddenly a text from Yolanda saying she wanted a divorce. No explanation, no discussion, just cold words on a screen telling me to contact her lawyer. I stared at my phone, the life we built together crumbling before my eyes. For weeks, she had been distant, taking mysterious calls, coming home late. I replied with a single word, understood, but inside my mind was already calculating. If she wanted to end things this way, I would protect myself. Let me tell you what happened next. If you have ever faced betrayal, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. It all started at a charity fundraiser in downtown Chicago 5 years ago. I was there representing my company, a software development firm, specializing in financial technology. The evening was dragging until Yolanda walked in. She commanded attention in her elegant red dress, confidently networking with everyone in the room. When our eyes met across the crowded space, something clicked. "You look as bored as I feel," she said, approaching me with a playful smile. I laughed, immediately drawn to her directness. "That obvious, huh? I am Ryan, by the way. Yolanda Taylor, marketing executive at Greenfield Enterprises. And yes, that obvious." We spent the rest of the evening in deep conversation, discovering our shared love for travel, fine dining, and ambitious career goals. By the end of the night, I had her number and a date planned for the following weekend. Our relationship progressed quickly after that. Within a year, we were married and bought a spacious 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. I continued climbing the ladder at my company, while Yolanda thrived in her marketing career. We took luxurious vacations twice a year, maintained an active social life, and everyone in our circle considered us the perfect couple. "You hit the jackpot with Yolanda," my friends would tell me, and I believed it. For the first 6 years, everything seemed perfect. We rarely argued, supported each other through career challenges, and planned for a future that included starting a family once we hit certain financial goals. I thought we were on the same page about everything. But looking back now, I realize there were warning signs I should have noticed. The changes started about 6 months before the fateful text message. Yolanda became increasingly detached, often staring at her phone with a slight smile that would disappear whenever I entered the room. Working late again, I would ask when she came home after 10 p.m., the scent of wine on her breath. "Big project." "You know how it is," she would reply, avoiding eye contact before heading straight to the shower. These late nights became more frequent, along with mentions of new friends from work that I never got to meet. When I suggested joining her for after-work drinks to meet her team, there was always an excuse. "It is just boring work stuff, Ryan. You would hate it." Then came the password changes. One evening, I picked up her phone to check the weather since my device was charging, and discovered she had enabled a new security feature. When I casually mentioned it, her reaction seemed disproportionate. "Are you spying on me now?" she snapped. "I have client information on there. It is just standard security protocol." Our intimacy decreased noticeably too. The passionate connection we once shared faded into quick pecks on the cheek and excuses about headaches or exhaustion. When I tried to discuss these changes, Yolanda would dismiss my concerns. "You are overthinking everything," she would say. "Not everything is a problem that needs solving, Mr. Software Developer." I started to wonder if I was being paranoid, or if she was genuinely drifting away. Maybe it was just a phase, I thought. Maybe we just needed to reconnect. The day before I received that life-altering text message started like any other. I woke up at 6 a.m., went for my usual morning run, and made coffee for both of us. Yolanda emerged from the bedroom at 7:30, already dressed in a stylish business suit. "Morning," I said, sliding a cup of coffee across the kitchen island to her. "I made your favorite." She barely looked up from her phone. "Thanks. I've got a busy day ahead." As she sipped her coffee, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then quickly walked out to the backyard. Through the kitchen window, I could see her pacing on our patio, talking animatedly, while constantly checking to make sure I was not coming closer. When she returned inside, there was a slight flush to her cheeks. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work," she replied, gathering her things. "By the way, I have to go on a business trip next week. Last-minute thing. Marketing conference in Seattle." This was the first I had heard of any conference. "Seattle. For how long? 4 days, maybe 5. Not sure yet. The details are still being worked out." She checked her watch. I need to go. Major presentation today. As she headed for the door, I called out, "How about dinner tonight? That new Italian place you wanted to try. I made reservations for 7. She paused. "That sounds nice, but I might have to work late to prepare for this trip." "Rain check." "Sure," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "I will keep the reservation just in case." Throughout the day, I texted her a few times, receiving only brief replies. By 6, I had not heard whether she would make dinner, so I called. The call went straight to voicemail. I decided to keep the reservation anyway, hoping she might surprise me. At 6:45, she finally texted, "Sorry, got caught up. Not going to make dinner. Do not wait up." I canceled the reservation and picked up takeout on my way home. That night, I decided to wait up for her despite her message. I wanted to talk to find out what was really going on. I settled on the living room couch with a glass of whiskey and my laptop, catching up on work while waiting. The last time I checked the clock, it was 1:17 a.m., and Yolanda still had not come home. The next morning, I woke up still on the couch, my neck stiff and my laptop battery dead. It was 7:30 a.m., and the house was silent. I checked our bedroom. The bed was untouched. Yolanda had not come home at all. Concerned, I sent her a text. "Everything okay? You did not come home last night." No response. By 9 a.m., worry had turned to genuine alarm. I called her, but again straight to voicemail. I left a message asking her to call me back as soon as possible. Around 10 a.m., I went upstairs to change clothes and noticed something odd. Yolanda's side of the closet was partially emptied. Her favorite dresses, several pairs of shoes, and her weekend wear were gone. Her suitcase was missing too, but not the one she typically used for business trips. My stomach dropped. Something was very wrong. I tried calling again, this time leaving a more urgent message. "Yolanda, I am worried. Please call me back. If something is wrong, we can talk about it." At precisely 11:43 a.m., my phone pinged with a text message from her. "I want a divorce. All communication through my lawyer, Anthony Winters. Do not try to contact me." I read the message 3 times, unable to process the cold finality of it. No explanation, no warning, just the abrupt end of 7 years together, delivered via text message while she could not even face me. My first instinct was to call her immediately to demand answers, to try to fix whatever had gone wrong. But something stopped me. Perhaps it was pride, or maybe a sudden clarity that had been missing during those months of ignoring the signs. If this was how little our relationship meant to her, begging would not change anything. Instead, I sat down at our dining table and thought about our financial situation. We had joint accounts, shared credit cards, and a mortgage with both our names on it. I had been the primary breadwinner throughout our marriage, with my software development salary nearly double her marketing income. Many of our luxury purchases, including Yolanda's car, had been paid for primarily by me. I logged into our bank account and discovered something alarming. Over the past 3 weeks, large sums had been transferred from our joint savings to her personal account, totaling nearly $30,000. I also found credit card charges for hotels in the city, expensive restaurants I had never been to, and a jewelry purchase from a high-end boutique. It was clear that Yolanda had been planning this for weeks, perhaps months. And she had been using our joint funds to finance whatever new life she was creating for herself. That was when my shock turned to resolve. I took a deep breath, picked up my phone, and replied to her text with a single word: "Understood." Then I got to work. My first call was to our bank. I explained that I needed to freeze our joint accounts due to suspicious activity. The bank representative was sympathetic and helped me through the process. Since my name was primary on the accounts, I was able to halt any further withdrawals until we could sort things out legally. Next, I called each credit card company. I explained the situation and asked them to cancel the additional card issued to Yolanda under my account. For the joint cards, I requested they be frozen pending divorce proceedings. Within an hour, Yolanda's financial access had been significantly restricted. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. Williams?" asked the representative from our main credit card company. "Yes, I would like copies of the last 6 months of statements sent to my email, please." As the statements started arriving in my inbox, I began cataloging the unusual expenses, creating a spreadsheet of dates, locations, and amounts that seemed suspicious. The pattern was clear. Every Wednesday evening and occasional weekends there were charges at a downtown hotel and nearby restaurants. With a clearer picture forming, I called my company's legal department for recommendations on divorce attorneys. They suggested Sandra Jenkins, a respected family law attorney known for her no-nonsense approach. I secured an appointment with Sandra for that afternoon. Her office was in a sleek downtown building with a view of Lake Michigan. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who listened carefully as I explained the situation. "Let me get this straight," Sandra said, removing her glasses. "Your wife emptied your accounts, sent you a text asking for a divorce, and wants all communication through her lawyer." "That is correct," I replied. "And what exactly do you want from this divorce, Ryan?" I thought for a moment. "Fairness. I do not want revenge, but I also do not want to be taken advantage of." Sandra nodded. "Smart approach. First things first, we need to document everything. The text message, the bank withdrawals, those credit card statements. Next, we need to establish temporary arrangements for your shared assets and home." "Can I change the locks?" I asked. "Since she has effectively moved out and indicated through her lawyer that she will not return, yes, we can make a case for that. But we will document the change and inform her attorney that her belongings will be made available to her at a mutually agreeable time." By the time I left Sandra's office, I had a clear action plan. I stopped by a hardware store on the way home and purchased new locks for all exterior doors. Once home, I spent the evening installing them, securing my home physically, just as I had secured our finances earlier in the day. The next morning, I took a personal day from work to continue organizing my response. I gathered all important financial documents, took photos of valuable items in the home, and made copies of everything. While going through our home office files, I discovered something unusual. There was a folder containing information about job opportunities in Seattle, including a printout of a condo listing. The dates on the materials went back 3 months. I continued my investigation by going through our credit card statements more carefully. That was when I found the receipts for expensive gifts. I had never received a high-end watch, designer clothes in a size too large for Yolanda, and cologne I did not wear. It was becoming increasingly clear that there was someone else in the picture. As a final security measure, I installed cameras at the front and back entrances of the house. Sandra had advised me that if Yolanda attempted to enter the home without agreement, having video evidence would be helpful. The next step was to document the timeline of Yolanda's suspicious behavior. I created a detailed log of her late nights, mysterious calls, withdrawn behavior, and the business trip to Seattle that had never been mentioned until the day before she disappeared. This documentation would help establish a pattern if needed during divorce proceedings. With my immediate security measures in place, I focused on maintaining some normalcy. I returned to work the following day, throwing myself into coding projects to keep my mind occupied. My colleagues noticed my distraction, but assumed it was work-related stress. For the next 48 hours, there was complete silence from Yolanda. No calls, no texts, not even an email. It was as if she had completely disconnected from our shared life. However, I began receiving calls from mutual friends, all asking if I was okay, in a tone that suggested they knew something had happened. One friend, Thomas, was particularly transparent. "Look, Ryan, Yolanda called Amanda yesterday. She told her you two were splitting up, and that you had been, in her words, controlling and emotionally abusive throughout your marriage." I was stunned. "What? That is absolutely false." "I know, man. We have known you for years. No one is buying it. It sounds like she is trying to control the narrative." These character attacks made me even more grateful that I had consulted with Sandra early. She had warned me that false allegations sometimes emerge during divorces, especially when one party is trying to justify their own behavior. My brother Kevin drove up from Indianapolis to stay with me that weekend, providing much-needed moral support and distraction. On his suggestion, and with Sandra's approval, I hired a private investigator to look into Yolanda's current whereabouts and activities. If there was indeed another person involved, having that information could be relevant to our divorce proceedings, especially given the financial impropriety. "You are handling this remarkably well," Kevin commented, as we grilled steaks in the backyard. "I am not sure I have a choice," I replied. "Falling apart will not help me get through this." "Still, most guys would be a wreck." I shrugged. Maybe it has not fully hit me yet. Or maybe finding out about the money and hotel charges turned my hurt into something more productive. As we were finishing dinner, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. For a moment, I thought it might be Yolanda calling from a different phone. Instead, it was Anthony Winters, her lawyer. Mr. Williams, this is Anthony Winters representing Yolanda Taylor in your divorce proceedings. It had been exactly 72 hours since I had canceled the credit cards and frozen our accounts. His timing could not have been more predictable. Yes, Mr. Winters. What can I do for you? I kept my voice neutral and calm. I am calling because we have a situation. Your actions regarding the joint financial accounts constitute financial abandonment, which is something the courts look very unfavorably upon. His tone was aggressive, clearly designed to intimidate me into an immediate retreat. I understand your concern, Mr. Winters. However, after discovering significant unauthorized transfers from our joint accounts, I took reasonable measures to protect our marital assets. I would be happy to have my attorney Sandra Jenkins discuss this with you. This is not about attorneys right now, he continued, his voice rising slightly. My client requires access to funds for basic living expenses. Your actions have left her in a precarious position. Again, I would suggest you contact Sandra. She has all the documentation regarding the $30,000 that was transferred out of our joint accounts in the weeks before your client sent her text. There was a pause on the line. Clearly, Winters had not been informed of these transfers. Nevertheless, cutting off access to all funds is excessive and could make this process much more difficult than it needs to be. I appreciate your perspective, I replied. Please contact Sandra to arrange appropriate temporary support arrangements once we have full financial disclosure from both parties. I could almost hear his teeth grinding through the phone. This approach is not in anyone's best interest, Mr. Williams. Neither is receiving a divorce request via text message after 7 years of marriage, Mr. Winters. Now, is there anything else I can help you with? The call ended shortly after, with Winters reluctantly agreeing to contact Sandra. I immediately called her to give her a heads up, and she commended my handling of the situation. You stayed calm and referred him to me. Perfect. Let me handle him from here. The following day brought surprising information from the private investigator. He had located Yolanda staying at the Langham, a luxury hotel downtown. More importantly, she was not alone. The investigator provided photos of Yolanda entering and leaving the hotel with a man I immediately recognized, Jackson Ford, my former best friend and business partner. Jackson and I had started our careers together, even launching a small app development company during our early 20s. When the company failed to take off, we amicably went our separate ways professionally but remained close friends. He had been at our wedding, had spent holidays at our home, and was someone I had trusted completely. He had even consoled me over drinks just 2 weeks ago when I mentioned that things seemed off with Yolanda. The investigator's report indicated that they had been seen together regularly for at least 5 months based on hotel staff interviews. There was also evidence that Jackson had recently purchased an engagement ring from Tiffany's, matching the mysterious jewelry charge I had found on our credit card statement. Most revealing was the discovery that Jackson had recently accepted a job offer in Seattle, the same city where Yolanda had claimed to have a business conference. Everything was falling into place, creating a picture of betrayal more complete than I had imagined. The final piece came when the investigator confirmed that Yolanda and Jackson had dinner together at Le Bernardin the night before she sent the divorce text. It appeared they had been finalizing their plans to leave together. I sat in my home office staring at the investigator's report and photos, a strange calm settling over me. The mystery was solved. The woman I had loved and the friend I had trusted had been planning a new life together behind my back, using my financial resources to fund their affair. Just as I was processing this information, my phone rang again. It was Anthony Winters, calling for the second time in 2 days. His tone had changed dramatically. Mr. Williams, after discussing with your attorney, we would like to propose an informal meeting to discuss temporary arrangements while we work through the divorce process. What kind of arrangements? I asked, already knowing the answer. Financial support primarily. Miss Taylor is currently in a vulnerable position. I could not help but wonder if Jackson's support had fallen through, or if the limitations of hotel living without access to additional funds had become apparent. I will need to consult with Sandra, but I might be open to a meeting under certain conditions. What conditions? He asked, a note of eagerness in his voice. Neutral location, both attorneys present, and full financial disclosure from both parties before we meet. He hesitated before responding. I will discuss this with my client and get back to you. After consulting with Sandra, we agreed to the meeting, which was scheduled for 2 days later at her office downtown. She advised me to maintain my composure regardless of what was said. "They want something from you now," she explained. "That gives us leverage. Stay calm, let me do most of the talking, and remember that emotional outbursts only weaken your position." I spent the evening before the meeting preparing myself mentally for seeing Yolanda again. Despite everything, there was still a part of me that ached at the thought of her. 7 years of marriage could not be erased by a single text message, or even the knowledge of her betrayal. I arrived at Sandra's office 30 minutes early, dressed in a crisp navy suit that had always been Yolanda's favorite. It was a small detail, but presenting myself as put together rather than falling apart felt important. Sandra greeted me with a firm handshake and a reassuring nod. "Remember, let them talk first. We want to hear what they are asking for before we present our terms." We sat in her conference room, a sleek space, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. On the table in front of me was a folder containing copies of all the financial documentation, phone records, and the private investigator's report. Sandra had advised bringing everything, but not revealing what we knew unless strategically necessary. At exactly 2 p.m., the receptionist announced the arrival of Yolanda and Anthony Winters. When Yolanda walked in, I was struck by how tired she looked. The confident, vibrant woman I had married seemed diminished somehow, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervousness in her movements that was uncharacteristic. She avoided my gaze as she took a seat across from me, focusing instead on arranging her purse and notepad on the table. Winters, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, immediately took control of the conversation. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. As we discussed, my client is facing immediate financial hardship due to the abrupt termination of support," Sandra interjected smoothly. "Before we discuss support, we would like to address the circumstances that brought us here. My client received a text message demanding divorce and instructing all communication to go through counsel. No explanation was provided. Subsequently, he discovered significant financial transfers that occurred prior to this message." Winters shifted uncomfortably. "Personal matters aside, we are here to discuss practical arrangements." "The personal and practical are intertwined in this case," Sandra replied. She slid a document across the table. "This is a record of transfers totaling $30,000 from joint accounts to Miss Taylor's personal account in the 3 weeks preceding her departure." Yolanda looked up sharply at this, her eyes finally meeting mine. I kept my expression neutral, though my heart was pounding. Winters glanced at the document. "My client was merely securing funds she was entitled to as part of the marital assets, without discussion or agreement," Sandra noted. "Additionally, we have evidence of unusual expenditures that require explanation before any discussion of ongoing support." She placed another document on the table, this one showing the hotel charges and restaurant bills. Yolanda whispered something to Winters, who frowned in response. They conferred quietly for a moment before he spoke again. "My client acknowledges some personal expenses, but maintains these were minor compared to the overall marital assets." I decided it was time to speak. "Yolanda, why did you leave like that? A text message after 7 years." Winters started to interject, but Yolanda raised her hand to stop him. I did not know how to face you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It seemed easier this way." Easier for whom, I asked, keeping my voice level despite the anger and hurt rising inside me. Before she could answer, I opened the folder and removed a photograph, placing it face up on the table. It showed Yolanda and Jackson entering the Langham together, his arm around her waist. The color drained from her face. "How did you?" "I think we should address this aspect of the situation," Sandra said firmly. "The relationship with Mr. Ford appears to predate the separation by several months, during which time marital funds were used to finance the affair." Winters looked genuinely surprised, glancing from the photo to Yolanda with raised eyebrows. Clearly, she had not been fully transparent with her own attorney. "I can explain," Yolanda began, but then stopped, tears welling in her eyes. "Please do," I said. What followed was a confession I had not anticipated. Through tears and halting words, Yolanda revealed that yes, she and Jackson had been involved for months. They had planned to start a new life in Seattle, where he had accepted a position with a major tech company. "But it is over now," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Jackson, he changed his mind. Said he was not ready for the commitment after all. So that explained the desperate call from her lawyer." Jackson had left her stranded, the plans they had made together falling apart after she had already burned her bridges with me. "The night before you sent that text," I said slowly, "you had dinner with him at Le Bernardin, did not you?" She nodded miserably. "That was when he proposed. I accepted. We celebrated. And then the next morning he called to say he could not go through with it. That he had made a mistake." I absorbed this information, feeling an odd mix of vindication and pity. "So you sent me the divorce text after he proposed, but by then he had already changed his mind." "No," she admitted. "I sent it before he called to back out. I was so certain about our plans. And then everything fell apart." The room fell silent as the full picture emerged. Yolanda had gambled everything on a future, with Jackson only to be abandoned. Now she was alone with limited funds, no home, and a hastily initiated divorce she had not fully thought through. Winters cleared his throat, clearly trying to regain control of the narrative. "Regardless of the personal circumstances, my client is still entitled to equitable division of marital assets and temporary support." Sandra nodded. "We are prepared to offer fair temporary arrangements with some conditions." "What conditions?" Yolanda asked, directly bypassing her attorney. I spoke up. "Full financial transparency, return of the transferred funds to a supervised account until division is determined, and attendance at financial counseling." "Financial counseling?" Winters scoffed. "That is hardly standard." "Neither is emptying joint accounts and financing an affair with marital funds," Sandra countered. "Mr. Williams is being more than reasonable given the circumstances." Yolanda looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Why would you even offer anything? After what I did, it was a good question." Part of me wanted to walk away and let her face the consequences of her choices. But another part remembered the woman I had loved for 7 years, regardless of how things had ended. "Because it is the right thing to do," I said simply. "I will not leave you destitute, Yolanda. But I will not be taken advantage of either." By the end of the meeting, we had outlined preliminary terms for temporary arrangements. Yolanda would receive modest support for 3 months while she secured employment and housing. The remaining marital assets would be frozen until a final settlement was reached. She agreed to return a portion of the transferred funds to cover household expenses and my legal fees. As we prepared to leave, Yolanda asked if she could speak with me privately for a moment. Against Sandra's cautious glance, I agreed. We stepped into a small side office, leaving the attorneys in the conference room. "I am sorry, Ryan," she said once we were alone. "Not just for Jackson, but for how I handled everything. You deserved better." I nodded, keeping my emotions in check. "Yes, I did. I do not expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I recognize how badly I handled this." Why him, I could not help asking. He was my friend. She looked down. "It just happened. We ran into each other at a conference last year, started talking. One thing led to another. I never planned for it to go this far. But it did." "Yes," she admitted. "It did." We stood in uncomfortable silence for a moment before I spoke again. "I hope you find what you are looking for, Yolanda. I really do." With that, I turned and left the room, feeling a weight lifting that I had not realized I was carrying. The conversation provided no magical resolution, but there was a certain closure in finally having the truth acknowledged. The weeks following our meeting brought unexpected developments. Jackson reached out via email, asking if we could meet to explain his side of things. I declined, responding that there was nothing to discuss. Whatever friendship we had once shared was irreparably damaged, and his explanations would change nothing. The social fallout was complicated. Some mutual friends took sides immediately, with most rallying around me once the truth about the affair emerged. Others tried to remain neutral, an approach that gradually became untenable as the details spread through our social circle. I was surprised by how many people had apparently suspected something was going on, but had not felt it was their place to tell me. Thomas admitted that he had seen Yolanda and Jackson together at a restaurant months earlier, but had convinced himself it was an innocent business meeting. I should have said something, he told me over drinks. I just did not want to be wrong and cause problems. I could not blame him. Would I have believed it without evidence? Probably not. About a month after our meeting, I received an email from Yolanda. It was lengthy and heartfelt, acknowledging her mistakes more thoroughly than she had in person. She explained that she had been unhappy for longer than I realized, but had not known how to express it. The affair with Jackson had been an escape rather than a solution, she wrote, and she recognized now how much damage her choices had caused. I read the email several times, but did not respond immediately. Part of me wanted to engage to continue the conversation, but another part recognized that maintaining distance was healthier for both of us. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life. The divorce proceedings continued, with Sandra efficiently handling the legal aspects. I threw myself into work, earning a promotion that had been in the works for months. The additional responsibilities provided a welcome distraction from the personal turmoil. I also reconnected with family and friends I had neglected during my marriage. My brother Kevin visited more frequently, and I made a point of calling my parents weekly. I rekindled old friendships and built new ones, gradually creating a support network independent of the social circles Yolanda and I had shared. Therapy proved invaluable during this time. My therapist, Dr. Alan Morris, helped me work through the anger and betrayal without letting those emotions consume me. He encouraged me to examine my role in the marriage without taking responsibility for Yolanda's choices. It is possible to acknowledge where you could have been a better partner while still recognizing that her actions were her responsibility alone, he explained during one session. This balanced perspective helped me avoid both the trap of blaming myself entirely and the temptation to demonize Yolanda completely. People are complex, marriages are complicated, and sometimes things fall apart, despite best intentions. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I planned a solo trip to Portugal, something I had always wanted to do but had never prioritized. The 2 weeks I spent exploring Lisbon and Porto, hiking coastal trails, and sampling local wines became a turning point in my healing process. Away from familiar surroundings and daily reminders, I found myself thinking about the future, rather than dwelling on the past. I started making plans beyond just surviving the divorce, considering career changes, new hobbies, and even the possibility of dating again when I felt ready. The lessons from this painful experience were numerous and profound. I learned the importance of self-respect and boundaries of trusting my instincts, even when easier to ignore them. I recognized the value of financial independence and transparency in relationships. Most importantly, I discovered my own resilience, my capacity to face betrayal and loss without losing myself in the process. When I finally did respond to Yolanda's email months after receiving it, my message was brief but sincere. I appreciate your apology and wish you well on your journey forward. We both deserve happiness, just on separate paths now. Take care of yourself. With time, the raw pain of betrayal dulled to an occasional ache. I could look back on the good years of our marriage with appreciation rather than bitterness, while accepting that its ending, however painful, had opened doors to new possibilities I might never have explored otherwise. That text message asking for divorce had initially seemed like the end of my world. In reality, it was just the end of one chapter and the beginning of another one, where I was wiser, stronger, and more authentic in my relationships, both with others and with myself. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? How did you find the strength to move forward? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit subscribe and share this video with someone who might need to hear that there is life and even happiness after betrayal. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.